Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Hello, greetings, compadres. Okay, I'm sitting super close to the computer right now because behind me is this big aura/glow coming in from the window. This is the first sunshine we have had in a long time right here at this present moment as I record this. And so I don't want to blind anybody who happens to be watching this. You're welcome. And for the rest of you, if you are listening, welcome back to Eternally Amy. And we're in a series called 12 Steps for Anyone Who Wants Them. And this is step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Okay, so just a little bit of a reminder as we get started that through this series that I have done once a month for the past year, to remember to keep in mind that I endorse the 12 steps and I endorse 12-step programs. They do not endorse me. Okay, so any readings that I do from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12 and 12 is what it's called, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, or anything like that is simply kept intact because that's what the General Service Office has asked us to do when we use the material from the Big Book or the 12 and 12. But any parallels or insights or examples that I use are just mine. So just to make that distinction so that you don't think that what I'm saying is what Alcoholics Anonymous says or another 12-step program says. Okay, it's only when I use stuff that is from their literature. And I will try and always point that out when I'm reading something. I'm not perfect, but I always try and point that out. So being that there are 12 months in a year, there's a step for every month. And so January being the first month, talking about, spoiler alert, powerlessness, and then how our lives had become unmanageable when we were drinking, and then talking about the paradox of powerlessness and how it's actually empowering to admit that we're powerless. Okay. And then in February, the second month of the year, shouldn't be super surprising that we talked about step 2, which is coming to believe in a power greater than ourselves. And then step 3 for March, we talked about making a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And then in the 4th month, April, we took a personal inventory, and that was just to look at our lives and see how we had actually kind of fooled ourselves into blaming other people when we actually have the power to reframe and look at things from a whole different side and see where we can make changes. See, hey, where was I at fault? And then the 5th month, May, we talked about having a trusted friend or a sponsor to help us see that stuff that we can't really reframe on our own just yet. Step 6 and 7. So June and July, we talked about being willing to let character defects go. Okay. And then 8 and 9 for August and September, those steps are about realizing that we need to clean up our past and deal with the wreckage of our past in order to free us to be of maximum service in the future to other people. And really just to have peace of mind in our own soul as well. And so let's see, October was the 10th step month. And so we talked about continuing to take personal inventory and admit when we were wrong. And now we are on step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact of God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge, that is actually going to open our minds to the idea that it's not all about just me and my little plans and designs. It's about the betterment of society and the greater good on the whole. So what we're going to do is start on page 86. You may have heard, if you've ever attended a 12-step meeting of any kind, page 86 through 88 or 86, 87, 88. And so that's where we're going to start in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. So this is about the middle of page 86. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Okay, so what does that mean? For me, a self-seeking motive is something that benefits me alone and nobody else. Okay, so it's where I can get into that habit of I have a want, which I sometimes can actually confuse with a need. And that want is going to overshadow what is really for the good of the situation or the people involved, right? And so usually it's something that's easy and cheap, right? It's like choosing to go through the McDonald's drive-through instead of waiting for a steak dinner that is going to take more time and effort. Okay, just a similar concept. And then back to the reading, we're talking about motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So, what are wrong motives? Self-seeking for me, anything that just benefits me and my ego. Okay. So now I get to use my mind because I'm actually actively working on these steps, right? So I've treated my 3-part disease. Now I'm working on the spiritual part. I treated the mind, I've treated the body, and this is a continual process. But by not drinking, simply by not drinking, I'm treating the body. By treating the mind, I've started the step work and I'm starting to realize more about the disease of addiction, right? And what I can do in my power to fight that disease of addiction. So on the 9th step, I was working on my amends so I can have a clean slate with other people. And the 10th step is a daily inventory at night before I go to bed to really just look at my day and see, where I could have maybe done things a little bit differently and where I handled things okay, and just kind of have that daily check-in with myself and with my higher power. And so what I'm trying to do is create peace of mind and a safe mind so that I don't get to the point where I ever think, geez, what sounds like a solution right now would be a bottle of vodka. Now, that may seem a little bit strange that I would say that, being that I'm 12, almost 13 years sober. And thankfully, I don't think about alcohol as a solution anymore. It's been a long time since I've thought, I think a drink would make this better. It's more like, oh, a drink would make this so much worse right now. And I know if I drank over a problem, I would then have two problems. So I'd have, the fact that I drank something and then the original problem that existed. Okay, so back to the reading. So we're now at the last paragraph on 86. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. Okay, so that is actually my superpower. And I love to point this out in step 11. When we don't know what to do, when I'm going throughout my day, I don't know which course to take, what decision to make. That's where it is like, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to turn this over to God, right? Because that way I'm going to relax and I'm going to take it easy. I'm just going to say, hey, God, why don't you take this one? I don't know what to do next, right? And so that will be the invitation for me to just kind of let go of the steering wheel and let him just kind of show me throughout the day what the next steps are to be, where the chips will fall. And that's a much better position for me to be in because I can mess things up pretty quickly if given the opportunity, because my self-will will get involved and my ego will just kind of rise up and be like, oh, I think I know what a good idea is. And it's never good. So the big book tells me too, that after a while, this is going to become part of my daily process, that it becomes a part of how my mind functions, is that it's like this knee-jerk reaction all of a sudden. Oh, wait, hold up. I don't know what to do. Well, I better bring God into this. Okay. Where was I? Top of 87. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. So what I take that paragraph to mean is that, when I first was getting into the habit of doing a 12-step program, doing a sober lifestyle, I really kind of was like, oh, I think I know what comes next. I think I know what I'm supposed to do. And to me, what this says is, you know what? Take away the presumptions and just relax. It does say relax and take it easy and give it to God. Just give it to God and see what happens next. All I have to do is the next right indicated step or the next right indicated thing that comes into my life, right? That's all I need to worry about. And God is going to worry about the rest for me. That sounds pretty good, And I will tell you that sometimes the quote answer reveals itself to me in a way that is not of my choosing or not a way that is on my timeline. And so that will be annoying, but then inevitably I find later on in hindsight, I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I totally see now why it wasn't on my timeline, whatever it is. And so given that opportunity to just like, okay, hold on, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to turn it over and have that become a working part of my mind is how I'm going to be able to be of maximum service to other people. Lastly, I'll say on that, the other thing is I really sometimes have to, when I relax and take it easy, not be like expecting the big fanfare, like the big parade, because usually what happens is God will solve the problem for me. And if I'm too obsessed with how I think it should go or attached to an outcome that I think should happen, then I'll miss, the little beautiful parade that's going by because I'm expecting like this massive, you know, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off ticker tape parade to go by, when really maybe it's just tulips on the side of a homecoming float. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Back to the reading. So this is second paragraph of page 87. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. Remember, I don't get to decide what those problems are. Something that I may think is a problem maybe really isn't a problem. So I'm talking about like first world problems. Okay. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. And so that's what I mean. If I'm like all into my own designs and plans, and I'm the director of the show, and I know what's best for everybody, and everybody should be like a spreadsheet and just line up in columns and rows just for me, probably not going to have the best outcome. You know why? Because I don't know what is good for you. I don't know what is good for me 9 times out of 10. I need to turn it over to the universe, to the God of my understanding, and really just be willing to just hand it over with open fingers, right? And this is something that has been a theme for a lot of my life, but really, truly in sobriety, it's gotten much easier because it's actually really peaceful not to have to worry about the outcomes, right? Just to be able to turn something over and just go, this is kind of a real conundrum, God. So I'm not sure how you're going to work this out, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you. And then I'm going to relax. And I'm going to pray nothing but the very highest good for everybody involved. Do I always mean that, especially when I have a resentment towards somebody? Nope. But I am willing to be willing for that person's good as well. And that's kind of all that is required in some cases. And, God and the universe know the details of those circumstances. And so it is what it is. The point is, we're not praying for just something that we want, that endless I seek more, which is one of the acronyms for what alcoholism stands for. I seek more. Is that an acronym or is that an acrostic? Anyway. Okay. Then kind of in the middle of, we're still on 87. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. Now, here's the deal. A lot of us have scars and wounds from religious organizations. And so all this is saying is, look, this is not the Bible. This is not the end all be all for life. The whole first word of this step is sought. So it's about seeking. And if we ask our friends in whatever program we're in, whoever we trust, whether it's a therapist or a religious pastor, as it mentions here, or maybe it's a good friend, we ask them what they're reading. What are you into right now? What's your spiritual life look like? What does your spiritual practice entail? We can start to open our minds and see threads of the same themes in a lot of these different religious or spiritual materials. So it's once again that adage of, here's the elephant. If I touch the ear of the elephant, it's going to feel very different than if I touch the tail of the elephant, right? But it's all the same elephant. And this is the same idea here is don't close yourself off to the quote things of God. Call God whatever you want. Call God your higher power, whatever makes you comfortable. Okay. But the deal is, don't just close your mind or try not to close your mind to religious things just because you may have had poor experiences in the past. Just take some of those high level principles, let it just kind of wash over you, right? So that you're not attaching to the details of an old tape, an old narrative that wounded you, right? Okay, so bottom of 87. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful, and we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves, here it is, we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. Love that. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. And so what this says to me is, gosh, when I let my emotions go totally nuts, excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and I'm just all about me and all about my intense feelings, and this chess piece needs to move for me to, feel better about this. And then this chess piece needs to be over here. When I get that real tight, I can no longer find peace without these things happening. That's no bueno for me. No good at all, right? Mostly, I'm able to live life on a pretty even keel when I'm spiritually fit. Okay. And that's what this is talking about, is serenity. It's experiencing that serenity in our lives as a direct result of sobriety, of being in recovery, of doing these steps, right? And you know what? I love an efficient thing. I love me some efficiency. And anything that kills more than one bird with two birds with one stone, two birds with one stone. And I apologize if you're an animal person. I don't mean to offend. I'm just using it as a phrase, right? An example, a play on words, if you will. So anything that requires less energy and there's a bigger bang for my buck, I'm in. Okay. And so anything I would say in this, as I close this little explanation of my own experience with this part of the book, is that anything that is going to help me to foster that sense of spiritual fitness in my life, I'm your girl. I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm going to give it a try, right? Oh, hey, neighbor, what are you reading right now? Oh, A Course in Miracles? Cool. I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to watch a couple YouTube videos. I'm going to try that. And then I start reading that. Oh, The Untethered Soul, that's what you're reading? Cool. And I swear to you, it is amazing the way your higher power will lead you to conversations with people or things on the internet, an Instagram post or whatever, that will be like intriguing. And then you just kind of go, I wonder what that's about. And then you look into it, and then you start seeing these themes pop out of totally different materials and books. But it's like these same themes, right? Of becoming one with your inner soul, to want peace for you and the people you interact with, or whatever it is, themes of love, themes of generosity and benevolence and whatever. It's just incredible as you learn to see with new glasses. Okay. So the last paragraph here from the big book anyway, that we're going to read today is, we've now flipped the page to page 88. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in this simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, which is, of course, the last step that we'll be doing in this series. And so the next chapter is chapter 7 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's called Working with Others. So if you're catching a theme here, the theme is others, right? We want to work on ourselves and be the best version of ourselves for other people, so that when other people work with us at our job, when other people encounter us at the airport in the TSA line, or when we're not our best selves, or when we're at the hospital, or whatever it is, that we are actually not being contributors of chaos and negativity, but that to the best of our own ability, we're contributing positively to the stream of life by being willing to connect with other people, to see each other in a new light, to give freely of that sense of love and compassion and empathy. Okay? So that's what I have for that reading. But now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the 12 and 12. And as I do that, I want to tell you about something I did when I turned 11 years sober, which is, I was kind of given this word picture of a power button, right? Sorry, not a power button. That's the circle with the line through it. This is the pause. Okay, so the two lines next to each other. So if you picture the number 11 in numerical form, it's two lines, and so is the pause button. So if we pause when agitated or doubtful, that was kind of the theme for my 11th year of sobriety. If I don't know what to do next, if I'm irritated, or if I'm just kind of in this negative mindset or a funk, I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause. I'm going to turn it over to God. Okay. Because when I don't pause, let me tell you what happens, right? I react instead of respond to situations in my life. And when I react, it's usually straight from the ego. And it's usually about me wanting to insert myself or my will. And it's got like a thread or an underlying vein of entitlement at some level. It's not good. So if I pause instead, when agitated, doubtful, irritated, annoyed, angry, whatever, it's much better. Then I get to have power over how I respond. And then I can respond instead of react. Okay. So page 99 of the 12 and 12. This prayer you might have heard before. This is by St. Francis of Assisi, and it's called the Prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand rather than be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. And so, to me, this is all about doing the opposite of what my ego wants to do, right? Which is assert myself, right? Get involved, be recognized, be the, star. And again, as we just read in the big book, that's going to burn up my energy foolishly. And so if faith without works is dead, which is the last thing that we read in the big book, and now we're in the 12 and 12, then this is saying to me that, hey, you know what? This is an active prayer that I can take, that I can bring harmony when there's discord and hate, that I can bring peace, that, when there's confusion and hatred, that I can bring forgiveness and love when there isn't forgiveness and love. Make me a channel for that. Make me an opening for a little bit of that to seep through, right? Because all that's going to do is benefit humankind in the long run. So I need to remember, which is sometimes hard, right? That my God-given instincts, right? So we've talked about the instincts before, but emotional and financial security, place in society, and sex relations. If I want more of my share of those, and that's ultimately what I'm wanting out of a life circumstance or out of a relationship or in my daily life even, that's when things are going to get out of whack for me, because that ego will rise up. So instead, I need to flip that script, and I need to turn that over to God when I'm agitated, right? When I'm in that funk, and I just need to go, hey, God, you know what? Instead of this turmoil, may I be a healing balm, right? And this is huge. This is huge, right? One other thing that I want to say before I forget about prayer and meditation is that this specifically, what I've been talking about, obviously, is what I'm asking God for in prayer. A lot of times when I am in prayer and meditation, I don't ask for anything. I just meditate. And when I meditate, I just focus on things like May I be of service. May I be loving, right? May I be what you want me to be, God, because my ego will get in the way. And it takes me a while when I meditate to get to that place where I can pray for more specific things like, may I be, the greater good, representative of the greater good of your love in this situation. Because still I struggle with that ego just kind of wanting to pop out like a Jack in the Box toy and say like, hey, I'm still here, you know? And so when I meditate, I often don't say a word. I don't tell God, I was raised to tell God exactly what I wanted and, to call down the Holy Spirit and tell God how it should be and blah, blah, blah. And I just don't do that anymore because I know that I don't know what is good for me. And I certainly don't know what God wants, with exception of loving my neighbor and being available to somebody and, showing love and compassion. Those are all very universal, non religiously binding concepts that bind you into a particular denomination or a particular religion. Basically, all religions have those pathways to whatever it is that they are trying to point you toward, right? And so I just want to say that for me, prayer tends to be more of like the St. Francis prayer, like, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. And meditation for me tends to be me just listening to God, just being quiet and not saying anything. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is kind of close this off by, I'm going to go to page 105 to start closing this off. Okay. So what this is going to touch on for you, maybe, hopefully, as we end, is that to have conscious contact with God means that every single day I'm not going to have these incredible revelations, right? But as I look back on my life, and I have built a daily practice of spiritual fitness and turning my will and my life over to care of God as I understand God, as I seek the greater good for all humankind, right? The more I pour myself into that practice, over time, I'll be able to look back. I might not feel it right in the moment that, like, oh, yeah, this is great. Now I want nothing but wonderful things for everybody and every circumstance, and that's just not reality. It's not the daily life, but it is found through the seeking. It is found and it is eventually revealed, so it is worth the practice, right? It's like these people who practice jiu-jitsu or karate or these different martial arts. They're not getting attacked usually when they're leaving the studio and walking into the parking lot, but they are ready, right? They are prepared for when it comes. It's kind of the same thing. This is kind of a delayed reaction. This is sometimes something that is seen a little bit later. Let me just say that. Okay, so page 105 of the 12 and 12. At the top, and it's basically talking about conscious contact with God. It says, he will also report that out of every season of grief and suffering, when the hand of God seemed heavy or even unjust, new lessons for living were learned, new resources of courage were uncovered, and that finally, inescapably, the conviction came that God does move in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. So again, this is sort of just saying that it's in hindsight. A lot of times it's not in the moment. It's in looking backwards where we just see the fingerprints of God all over our lives or the universe caring for us, right? And so I just want to let you know that whatever spiritual practice you develop, the more open and the more willing that you are to just let God be a gentle breeze in your life, right? And that you come to seek him through all the little daily encounters that you're presented with. I fully believe that you will eventually start to see with a new pair of glasses, where all of a sudden our perception of something that happened to us changes just a little bit. And we start to really have this relationship with the God of our understanding, or the universe, become a working part of the mind, as it said in the big book, because we come to rely on it, which is also something we read. We come to rely on it. It's a gentle breeze a lot of times. It's not the big explosion 4th of July, right? It's just the gentle breeze. It's the sunshine that was behind me when I first started this. It's the little, butterfly that you see flying through the sky totally unexpectedly when you're out taking out the garbage, right? That's what we look for, and that's what we seek. And so just remember to use that little pause button, pause when agitated and doubtful. That's what we try to do in recovery. That is the goal of step 11, is to seek God, conscious contact with God in everything that we do, whether washing the dishes or driving down the street. God can be found in all of those things. So remember to be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.